Welcome to the July 2023 Michigan Gardener. This month we'll be taking a lot of vegetables out of here, hopefully. Our tomato plants are growing so vigorously that we've actually for the first time had to do some pruning, both to keep them a little bit more airy and also to keep things from just falling all over the ground. And to start our show off, Gretchen's going to tell you all about it.
We really focused on tomatoes last week. Last week marked a turning point. We had been feeding once a week with a high nitrogen fertilizer every Friday, like clockwork, feeding Friday. We've now switched over from a regular Miracle-Gro, which is high in nitrogen, to Miracle-Gro to encourage blooms and flowering. The tomatoes also had to be trimmed back. Kyle started almost all of these tomatoes by seed early in the spring, and as you can see, although your seed-grown tomatoes start off tinier than what you're going to buy in the greenhouse ready to go, they have all caught up or surpassed the two plants that we bought from a greenhouse. Because they have grown so vigorously, we needed to pay a little bit of attention to them, and we did some trimming. We've never really pruned our tomato plants before, but we needed to expose the tomatoes that are forming to more light, give them more air circulation to hopefully prevent fungal infections. Okay, if you are going to prune your tomato plants, prune off these guys. These little stems that come off a main shoot at a 45-degree angle, they're never going to bear any tomato fruit. So these were traditionally called sucker shoots, and it may be an old wives' tale that it helps the plant, but we decided to give that a go this year because we had way too many vines on our plants. We also spent some time using twine to secure some of the heavier branches of the vines that were hanging on the ground, and that just seemed like they weren't going to support the tomatoes. One last thing to remember, especially this time of year, consistent watering is really the key. It will help prevent your tomatoes splitting, and it will also keep your plants looking great.
One of my big projects from last year and this year has been this pawpaw garden, and we have some lavender here, and the bees are just going absolutely crazy on that. And then red flowers, and those were supposed to be Indian paintbrush, but I didn't get a single plant to germinate, so I just bought some Spagelio, which is a relative. And the thing I was really hoping to get was Texas Bluebonnets. And I tried a bunch of different batches of seeds. I did just about everything I could think of, different germination conditions and everything like that. I finally got 5 plants out of it. We potted them out here, and I now have blooms. So awesome, but there's only 5 plants. Looks like all of them will bloom. The question is going to be, will we get enough seeds from that for these to reseed themselves? Or am I going to have to try again next year with more plants? And only time will tell. Another planting experiment I tried this year was Cape gooseberry. Now, Cape gooseberry is a relative of the tomatillo. Tomatillo being Physalis americana or something like that. Physalis meaning bladder. The Cape gooseberry was grown on the Cape of Good Hope, and the way they got those seeds was from Peru. So the Cape gooseberry is like a tomatillo, same thing, it has that husk around it, but instead of being green, they're orange and supposedly sweeter. They are pretty low germination rate plant. I planted this tray with probably 400 or 500 seeds in there and just got a few plants. So I'm thinking that I will not probably get Cape gooseberries this year, but what I'm going to do is plant some of these plants into a little bit bigger pots and see if I can have a mother plant to take cuttings from next year, because I think it may be a lot easier to grow these from cuttings than it is to try to grow them from seed. We'll put some potting soil in here, and I'm going to try to dig that root ball out of there without damaging too much of it. Leave, you know, nice wide swath of roots, hopefully, because I have a feeling that that root ball on this plant is quite vigorous, and that's why it's so big. Reason you want to plant these plants on your seedlings is that eventually they're going to exhaust the available space and certainly the nutrients in whatever situation they're growing in. And I'm pretty sure that this compost here that I'm pulling this out of is pretty spent, because it was a seedling compost which basically has no nutrients. So you can see the nice healthy root system on there. And we'll put it into a fresh pot, give it some good water, plenty of more nutrients, and hopefully these will grow this year. I'll bring them inside in the winter, and I'll have a mother plant that I can take cuttings from, so that next year, come May, we'll have some nice big physalis plants like this to put out in the garden.
So we're out here at our sweet peas. Sweet peas are really a glorious plant. You can make your own support or buy a support to grow them up, but they do need a good structure. You have to tie them in the beginning, but after that they develop these tendrils and they will tie themselves in. One nice thing about sweet peas is they make excellent cut flowers that have a glorious fragrance, and the more you cut, the more you'll get.
The first of my tomatoes is ready, and this one is one of those grafted tomatoes. And just to refresh your memory, they take a really disease-resistant and strong rootstock and then graft typically an heirloom style tomato to it to make it hardier. And this particular variety is called Mortgage Lifter, and it was during the Great Depression this strain was developed, and it was called Mortgage Lifter because you could sell that readily because it was such a great tomato, and a lot of garden centers and, you know, random people were able to pay off their mortgages because it sold so well and it's a delicious tomato. So now I'll harvest this, and this will be the first tomato that I taste test this year. Big, heavy. Woo. All right, so here we have it. Our glorious tomato, which weighs in at 389 grams or 13.9 ounces. Oof. Oh, well, I don't see any other thing to do but to cut it up now. So here we are. Let's just take the bottom part off. Ooh, juicy. Wow, look at that. I'll make some slices here for our BLTs. Wow. Oh, juice is just going everywhere. Oof. Oh, it's squirting out the other side. Can't believe it. Oof. Pretty uniform consistency all the way through it. You don't get the big voids that you do on some of these heirlooms. Really kind of beefy. Now we're getting up towards the part where I save these as little chunks, as little snackies for me. when you start getting into this part right here, into the pith, I just do this, and we'll save that for the compost bin. We'll try one of these without any salt. Wow, sweet. But not overly sweet, not a huge amount of sour in there. Must be a little bit lower acid tomato. Now, I always eat them with salt, so let's try this one. Oh, I have so missed that flavor. There's just nothing like a tomato that ripens on the vine. See, most of the tomatoes that you get in the grocery store, they have to ship them green, because if you had a ripe tomato rolling around in the back of the truck, it'd get damaged, and shipping times might be too long, so your tomatoes might spoil. And so they ship them green. And then they put them in a room with ethylene gas. Now, ethylene gas is a normally occurring gas that's released when fruit ripens, so it's not like they're doing anything horrible. It's just that it'll never develop the sugars and the juiciness that one of these vine ripened tomatoes will. It's just not going to happen. And plus, this is grown in actual dirt as opposed to the stuff that's probably grown hydroponically. Zero taste. This, oh my God.
All right, we have a bumper crop of basil right now. I must have planted over 40 basil plants out here in the garden, maybe 45. And we companion planted them with tomatoes. There's an old wives' tale that they make the tomatoes taste better. I don't know if that's true, but they do like the same water requirements and the same sun requirements, so they're a good companion. I'm pretty excited. This is the first time I get to use our herb bag from the Olivers. They sent this last year when we started the podcast, and we're making pesto tonight, so it'll be the perfect time to get to use this for the first time this year. So, you want to keep your basil trimmed back so that it'll get bushy and not too leggy. If it starts to flower, you want to cut it immediately, because once it flowers, it'll start going to seed and it will stop producing the leaves that you need for cooking. Tonight we're having pesto. You need 2 cups of basil, a half a cup of pine nuts or walnuts, a half cup of Parmesan, a cup of extra virgin olive oil, a teaspoon of salt, and you can use a little splash of squeeze of lemon juice and a little bit of fresh ground black pepper. And you just pulse it all in your food processor and serve it over whatever pasta you like. We like fettuccine. We would never be able to eat all of the pesto we could make with this basil fresh. So you can make your pesto up, put it in ice cube trays, freeze it for, usually takes 3 to 4 hours. Pop them out of the ice cube tray and put them in a food saver, and you can freeze pesto, and then you can have a fresh taste of summer all year round.
The plant you're seeing right now is one of the holy grails of gardening. That's Meconopsis cambrica, and Meconopsis are found in the Himalayas, and they're called Himalayan poppies. However, they're not true poppies, but we'll follow this plant throughout the year. It's notoriously difficult to grow and very low germination rate. I got 20 seeds. They were $1 a piece, and I got 1 plant. These tend to be very, very difficult plants to grow, and I think I've found just the right sort of conditions for it. It's protected from full sun. It's slightly acidic soil here, and the soil is moist but not soaking, and it's got really good drainage. So hopefully we'll follow this through its life cycle this year. And next year I plan to plant some Meconopsis lingom, and those are Himalayan blue poppies. This is such a treat, so difficult to get something like that to grow, and here it is.
Newer varieties of hydrangea called Endless Summer can actually be deadheaded so that you get repeat blooms. Okay, so all you have to do is take a spent bloom and you go down to the next set of buds, which is usually around the next double set of leaves, and you just trim, and that will give that new bud some light to which it can form a flower head. Consistent watering schedules are really essential for growing good tomatoes that don't split their skins. We've been consistently watering ours, and they were developing beautifully until the weekend when we had lots and lots of rain, which triggered a lot of growth and some split tomatoes. But that's okay. We're going to harvest them and make some tomato soup. Alright, we have more than enough tomatoes to make soup. I like Ina Garten, the Barefoot Contessa's recipe. Basically, you'll take 2 pounds of fresh tomatoes, slice them in half. You're going to put them in a big bowl, drizzle quite a bit of olive oil over the top, stir them up, put them on a cookie sheet. Then you're going to roast them in the oven for about an hour on 350, turning over once halfway through. You saute an onion, some garlic, in a couple tablespoons of olive oil. You add your tomatoes along with a 28-ounce can of whole peeled tomatoes and a quart carton of chicken stock, and you put your roasted tomatoes in and you cook all that up, simmer it for about an hour. Add some basil, a little bit of fresh oregano, maybe like a teaspoon or so, a handful of basil torn up, and then once it's reduced to your liking, you just use an immersion blender, and I like to add a little bit of cream at the end, and you have a really delicious soup, salt to taste. Trick that I learned from Monty Don on Gardener's World: sometimes when you buy a bigger plant at the garden center, this is a Coreopsis American Dream, sometimes it naturally wants or can be divided into more than one plant so that you can dot smaller plants in more places, and it's a little more economical way to plant things and to get a faster spread. Coreopsis is a really tough plant. It grows in prairies, so it should withstand this division. This one, as you can see, kind of wants to divide into three. It's kind of 3 plants anyway growing together. I'm just gonna gently tease it apart. Sometimes you have to take these bigger roots and just tease them a little bit. And you can kind of separate it. And then I have 1. We don't need that. 2, 3. And I'm going to dot these on both sides of this sidewalk to kind of bridge the plantings.
Well, the first of my Rutgers 250 tomatoes has ripened, and we're going to do a head-to-head comparison of the Rutgers 250 and the only other variety I currently have, which is the Mortgage Lifter. Mortgage Lifter has been a real treat so far this year. Really excellent tomato. You can see super juicy. And we're just going to start with a head-to-head comparison to see which of these is a better tomato, or which of these I think is a better tomato. So I'm going to start with the one that we already know, which is the Mortgage Lifter. Perfect. Can't be beat. And now here's the Rutgers 250. Also very good. Not quite as juicy, but still a darn good tomato and better than anything you can buy in the grocery store, certainly. So, with the rest of this, I'm going to make insalata caprese. So I've got some tomatoes. I'm just going to kind of cut into chunks. The key with this salad is to keep it really simple. Simple ingredients, fresh ingredients, the freshest you can get. Your tomatoes, if you can get them grown at a farmer's market, or if you grow them yourself, then pick them and eat them, because that's when they're best. So we'll put this on there. And I like to have, for my salad, a little bit more variety of tomatoes. And I just happen to have these cherry tomatoes that if I don't use them, they're going to go bad. I didn't grow those, but these are still pretty good. They're store-bought and they ripen on the vine. So we'll chuck these in there. And then you want to get the best mozzarella available to you. Right now, for me, that's this water-packed mozzarella from Belgioso, I guess. Weird name. Anyway, so get the best mozzarella you can. The stuff that comes packed in plastic and is dry is okay, but you're going to have a better experience with this really good, or as good as I can get right now, mozzarella. If you were really lucky, you would be able to have a source for the buffalo mozzarella, but I have a source, but it wasn't available today. You can also make your own mozzarella, and there's plenty of videos on YouTube of how to do that. Again, keep in mind your proportions. This is basil that I just picked. We're going to use that, but first I've got some Malden sea salt we're going to put on there. So we'll put our salt. See, it's these big flakes. Makes it pretty attractive, like that. And don't skimp. We'll do a little fresh black pepper, like so. Now, I'll just kind of tear some basil leaves and put them on there. Oh, wow, that smells incredible. And someone, if you heard that air break out there, is delivering right now to me a barn. So as that gets built, we'll show some progress of that, probably in the August timetable. That's good. And now, you know that really fancy olive oil that's like super expensive that you don't buy, or if you do, you really don't know the difference? Well, this is where you would use it, in something like this. So good, healthy amount of olive oil poured over the top here. And this is when you use the good stuff. You don't make it into spaghetti sauce or whatever. And there we are, insalata caprese. These are the Christmas lima beans, and we're already starting to get some beans. I think we're going to be loaded with them this fall. But that is it for the July edition of Michigan Gardener. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. And August is going to be Harvest City around here. Bye.